Welcome to today's show. So, Bitcoin hits an all-time high. Ethereum is ripping as well. And I'm going to get into some exciting stuff about the two companies, BMNR and MSTR, that are at the center of it all. When you look at these two companies, they control 90% of the liquidity in the digital asset treasury market, which basically means they trade billions and billions and billions a day, and they're being picked up by institutions, and they are quietly building the new Wall Street. So let's get into what's really happening and why this is the start of the financial revolution that we've all been waiting for. Now, remember, not tax advice, not financial advice, not legal advice, just here sharing some ideas to ponder upon. Now, what's exciting about what I'm going to share today is I'm really going to break down BMNR. I'm going to break down MSTR. I'm also going to get into some potential price predictions in the future based on some things that Tom Lee has stated recently about Ethereum and also BMNR. And I'm really going to break down specifically how Wall Street is moving on to the blockchain. So I don't say this lightly. This could be one of the most important videos that I've done on really understanding how big the effect is of Wall Street moving onto the blockchain for speed, obviously to make more money, and to keep up with the technology, which is the greatest technology, I think, on Earth right now. Maybe next to AI, but the blockchain. So here we go. All right. So first, let's jump in and let's talk about BMNR, and then we're going to get into MSTR and chat about both of them today. So BMNR, I believe, can easily reach $100 before the end of the year. So I'm not throwing around price predictions here lightly, not tax advice, not financial advice here, but I do believe this, and I personally hold a large amount of BMNR as well as MSTR. Full disclaimer here. Now, here's why. If you have not watched my channel before, you know I talk about MSTR and I talk about BMNR. So part one is going to be BMNR. Part two is going to be MSTR. Now, if you have not heard of BMNR before, they hold about 2.6 million Ethereum. And at today's price, around $4,500, it's roughly about $11.7 billion worth of ETH. They've got roughly $400 million in cash. They also have Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And if you do it in today's price, they got about $12.1 billion in total assets. They've also invested in some companies that they call moonshots. The company that they invested in is called Eightco. We'll get into that in a moment because that technology is super, super important to the future of the blockchain and the future of planet Earth in terms of finance. So they're not just sitting on Ethereum. They're actually moving forward the progression of the blockchain overall. And they're a big, 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 big part of its infrastructure, holding 2.1% of the supply of Ethereum. Now, if you watched any of my videos before, you've heard me talk about BMNR and how it's the goal of them to actually own 5% of the supply of Ethereum. And you'll hear later in the video how Tom Lee was talking recently about the potential of even 10% of the Ethereum supply, because they've had researchers look at this, and I think 5% is a layup for BMNR to own of the Ethereum network, and it is possible that maybe they will own 10% at some time in the future. So I'm going to get into today the institutional adoption piece, and when one understands the technology of what's really going on and how Ethereum is changing the face of finance and how BMNR is kind of leading the push on this. And Tom Lee is the spokesperson because he's the chairman of BMNR and he's the spokesperson now for BMNR, but also the spokesperson for Ethereum. He's the voice and Wall Street listens to him. So the examples I'm going to give you are reasons why I'm extremely bullish on this stock and why I fully believe in what's happening on how Wall Street's transitioning onto Ethereum, because it's happening right now. And I'm going to give you some real world examples so you can understand and see. Okay. Now, down below, if you want to grab my book, there's a free version of my book called Money Game. And so if you want the full understanding of Bitcoin, Ethereum, BMNR, MSTR, the history of money, how the Fed works, and you want the whole 9 yards in sequence, you should get the book. It's totally free. The book just came out, and the hard copy version will be on Amazon in about another week or two. But the digital version is free down below if you want to snag it. So let's get into institutional adoption and what's happening. So you hear about institutions like Goldman Sachs increasing institutional investment in Ethereum. You've heard about Peter Thiel, who was one of the founders of PayPal. He owns 9% of 9% of BMNR, and he also personally holds Ethereum. And there's also big news of other larger institutions like Abu Dhabi's bank. So the biggest bank in Abu Dhabi, it's called First Abu Dhabi Bank. It's launching what's called a dirham-backed stablecoin. So basically, it's a digital version of their money, and they're doing this along with other big Abu Dhabi groups. Now, the goal is very simple of why they're doing this. They want to let people and businesses send money instantly using the blockchain. So they're basically making a UAE stablecoin for the whole economy. And if you've heard the talk recently about stablecoins, you would know that about 60 to 70% of all the stablecoins are on the Ethereum blockchain. And this is a very, very big deal. If you've been following this for the last several months, the Genius Act that was passed basically says that for every stable coin, it has to be backed by a US dollar. So that's in the United States. For every stable coin there is, it has to be backed by a US dollar or a US Treasury bill. So this is a big deal in the United States because now you have Wall Street and the banks in bed basically with Ethereum, and they're pushing the theme of stablecoins. Now you see this happening across borders in the UAE. And First Abu Dhabi Bank is the largest bank in UAE, and they're managing hundreds of billions of assets, close to $300 billion. So that's extremely big news. So if I personally, when I look at investing in things, I want to understand the technology and infrastructure behind it. And so if I have knowledge and understanding of it, I'm going to be way more aggressive in my allocation. And this is what I was telling a group that I was with this weekend at a seminar I was doing. I said, listen, here's the deal. I could throw money into Bitcoin. I could throw money into Ethereum and go, hey, I'm going to ride the wave because people are talking about it and so forth and so on. But when one has deep knowledge, understanding of exactly what's going on, the confidence is high because the knowledge is high. So for me, I make larger allocations into things that I'm confident about, which is why when I started to study BMNR and I started to study Ethereum and how Wall Street is moving onto the blockchain and they're on there now using the Ethereum blockchain, I have a high degree of confidence in what's going on. It's just like in Bitcoin in 2017, 2018, when I started investing in Bitcoin, I started to understand it and study it. I got a real good understanding of it in 2019, 2020, and I went all in on it. So when one has a high degree of understanding and knowledge, they can make bets that to other people think it's risky, it's crazy, what are you doing? And ultimately, for me, I'm like, I know exactly what I'm doing, and I'm extremely confident in it. So with this is powerful to understand the technology of Ethereum and how Wall Street is trusting in this. And not all of Wall Street is moving to Ethereum, but a big percentage of Wall Street is trusting Ethereum as a trusted blockchain, okay? So here's some examples of what's actually going on right now, which is pretty freaking cool, okay? Now you look at PayPal. PayPal has an official stable coin, my friends. It's called PYUSD. PayPal's already doing this right now. And so the logic is, well, yeah, I use PayPal. We use it in our business. In fact, we were just in our business. We were trying to handle something on PayPal, and literally we were shut down for like a day and a half, and we had trouble moving money into PayPal. There was like trouble moving money, and then there was a delay to get the money into it. And this is the classic problem with the banking system today. Classic problem. It takes 1 to 2 days to settle. And this is the problem with the banking system. This is why Wall Street is moving on to the blockchain, because if transactions can settle in seconds, you don't have these problems. And I personally, running a company, we face this exact problem where 25% of our sales were coming through PayPal. And we were like, when we get shut down for 2 days, that's a lot of money for our company. A lot of money. So I was dealing with this with PayPal firsthand. And so as I've been doing the research and understanding that PayPal now has a stable coin. So when you look at the different ways that why Ethereum and why when you look at Ethereum and you look at other blockchains, Ethereum being the leading one and the preferred one for Wall Street. I'm not saying they're the best chain out there, but they're one of the most trusted chains right now. Solana is obviously a great chain as well. But when you look at Ethereum, one of the reasons why Wall Street's going there, or three of the reasons, is number one, tokenization. The other reason is also stable coins. So this is a first example of stable coins with PayPal. They created their own damn stable coin, and they're utilizing the Ethereum network, and their stablecoin lives on the Ethereum network so that transactions can take place faster. And I don't know if you know this, but when you're using PayPal, it seems like your transaction settles instantly when you're going customer to merchant, but actually PayPal's fronting the money. So it's not an instant settlement of transaction. It still goes behind the scenes where it takes a delay of 1 to 2 days because that's how the banking systems work. The banking systems are slow, period. So if I'm PayPal, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, look at what's happening on the blockchain. If the blockchain is moving 24/7, 365 and payments are settling instantly, then some other company is going to come up with an app, then they're going to call it CryptoPal, and they're going to replace PayPal because PayPal's too slow with the current banking system. So why is PayPal moving to this? Because, like, as Wayne Gretzky said back in the day as a great hockey player, I don't skate to where the puck is at, I skate to where the puck is going. So literally, PayPal knows where the puck is going. They're like, we will be put out of business if we don't go to the blockchain. It's fact, man. That's where the technology is. So they're moving ahead of the game, creating their own stable coin. Now they're on the Ethereum blockchain with their stable coin, and now they're already utilizing this to settle transactions. And they're instant, which is incredible. Incredible, incredible. Now, as a consumer, the functionality of it, you have to kind of go pick PYUSD to be able to use it. But so they're getting the functionality down. It's going to become more and more in vogue, and it's going to be more and more used. And the whole behind the scenes function for PayPal is going to function completely different, where they're not going to have to front the money anymore because the transactions are going to settle in seconds because they have digital dollars, which are stable coins, which is PYUSD, which is their stable coin, which is absolutely incredible, which is literally changing the entire game of how companies will actually operate. And PayPal is one of the companies that is moving into this. So I'm giving you real live examples of actual companies that are well known. And so what they get to use is use their brand name, because they do have the brand name and they do have the customer base. But pretty soon, if they don't start using the technology of the Ethereum blockchain, they're going to be out of business, because they can have the brand all they want. But if it's 1.5% fee that I pay to get my money faster with PayPal, I want it instantly. If I got to pay a 1.5% fee, and I got to wait sometimes, if it's traditional and I don't want to pay the fee, we're 1 to 3 days for the business of the money to settle, that's not a good business model. Hence why the Ethereum blockchain is such an important technology for Wall Street and for the majority of larger institutions out there today. Okay. So that is one example. PayPal has a damn stable coin now. If this doesn't say writing on the wall, the writing is on the wall. All right. And the idea is on this, instead of, paying larger fees, it's like, in about 10 seconds, you can transfer the money anywhere in the world for less than for cents, instead of dollars. We're talking about here, there's no middleman, there's instant settlement, and you have global reach. And that's why PayPal is doing it. Now, you look at another group like JP Morgan. This is an example of JP Morgan. And remember, JP Morgan was like poo-pooing freaking Bitcoin for years, man. And now JP Morgan has projects to build on the blockchain. In fact, JP Morgan is building their own blockchain called Onyx. So they're not actually on the Ethereum blockchain, but they're actually using Ethereum-based technology so that they can compete in the marketplace of settling global transactions faster, which is incredible, right? JP Morgan, who was literally poo-pooing the blockchain technology and Bitcoin, is now developing their own blockchain. And the whole reason is they move billions of dollars daily between big corporations. And so even if you're looking at for them to move money, if it costs them a small 0.1% fee with the traditional system, and it adds a 1-day delay to move this money in the traditional system, if they're now going on the blockchain, building their own blockchain right now, and they can avoid the 0.1% fee that they're paying in the traditional systems of moving the money, and they can avoid the 1-day delay or the 2-day delay, they're moving money faster. They have less fees. They're saving millions and millions and millions of dollars, because speed in the world of money and speed in the world, period, is power. which is why freaking JP Morgan, who was not a promoter of blockchain technology, even recently is now building their own blockchain. Okay? So this is insane, man. And this is why BMNR is hot, man. It's the next MSTR. It is here. This is why Ethereum, that was like, quote unquote, people thought it was the dead chain. It is not dead, man. Wall Street's going to go to the trusted source. It's been around for 10 years. It's never gone down for a single second. They're going to go to the conservative chain, and that's the trusted chain for some of Wall Street right now, and they're already doing it. PayPal's already on Ethereum with the stablecoin. It's happening, guys. It's happening, okay? BlackRock. Let's get into another one. You got BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, $10-11 trillion of assets, launched a tokenized money market fund on Ethereum. It's already happening. It's here. If the writing isn't on the wall that Ethereum's going to rip and that BMNR is going to rip, Bitcoin's already ripping. MSTR ripped in 2024. It's going to have its run again. I'm getting into MSTR in part 2 of the show. We'll talk about it soon, okay? But BMNR, listen, it's the next MSTR. It's so damn obvious to me that it's beyond obvious, okay? So cool thing on this, right? So now take a look at what is going on with BlackRock. So BlackRock is tokenizing money market funds. So the idea on this, when you hear these terms like tokenization, I want to get into this to break it down, because you hear these words like, how do you really understand what all this means? So I'm going to give you a couple examples of it. So tokenization means a traditional money market fund. We know how it works in the real world. So what BlackRock does is they wrap it up in a token. So it gets wrapped up in a token, and then that token goes on to the blockchain. And so now, instead of a traditional money market fund, that when large customers that they have, because a lot of their customers park a high degree of money in ETFs and also money market funds. So if you're BlackRock and your customers have trillions of dollars in ETFs and money market funds, and you're like, for my customers to get their money and move their money, there's a 1-day settlement or a 2-day settlement, and it moves so damn slowly, dead capital that sits there and doesn't move doesn't make anybody money. So if you're BlackRock, which they're already, we know what BlackRock is doing. By the way, BlackRock owns a 5% share stake in MSTR, in strategy. 5% of MSTR, all right? They know what they're doing, okay? They have the most inflows out of anybody on planet Earth of Bitcoin. They know what they're doing. And now they're on the damn Ethereum blockchain, man. They're tokenizing money market funds. They're wrapping it up in a token so they can trade it 24/7, 365. Money that sits there dead or asleep makes you lose money when it's dead, sitting there on a 1 or 2 day delay, or it's asleep. And traditional finance is asleep. If it's open 8 to 10 hours a day and the blockchain's open 24/7, 365, that's called sleeping. Sleep. While the rest of the world sleeps, the blockchain doesn't. So look at the writing. They're invested in MSTR, BlackRock. They have the most inflows out of any ETF, Bitcoin. All right. They are on the damn blockchain now. On the damn blockchain. It's here. It's here. And so I'm of the mind, and this is my personal viewpoint, that, okay, we're going to go through October and November, Uptober. Who's liking October? We're feeling it already. It's going to be a run in November, Moonvember. It's exciting. And by the way, we've earned this. We've been sitting through the shit for the last 6 months, chopping sideways, this way, that way. It's time. It's coming. But I'm of the mind of the possibility that we may see an extension of this into 2026. Now, I've said on previous shows, I'm like, I still think we're going to go up in October, November, and we're going to see a drop maybe in December. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. But as I see all of this institutional adoption and all this stuff that's pushing the blockchain forward, it is a different time. Now, do I still think we're going to have a pullback? I still do. I still think we're going to have some kind of pullback. I don't think it's going to be as big as the previous years, but there's going to be some type of pullback. Maybe it's a fake out. Maybe it's a temporary dip. Maybe we continue to 2026, but there's so much push from institutions in this that we are literally at a different landscape. And to look at it in a new unit of time, you have to look at it in a new unit of time. It's not the same as 2018 or 2020 and 2021. We're in a different time. But it's still October and it's still Moonmember, and that's the same. But what's going to happen in 2026, I don't know. So we have to be open to the possibility of things could continue, who knows, but also planning for myself, taking profits in November, December. Okay? So with that said, BlackRock has a money market fund. Investors who want to move money in and out, it can take 1 to 3 days to settle, which locks up capital, slows down the opportunity to move money and make more money. And they are now tokenizing a marketing fund, money market fund. And I believe the money market fund is BUILD or something like that. But you'll have to look it up. I think it's B for BlackRock, BUILD. It stands for BlackRock US International. No, BlackRock US Liquid International Digital Money. I think that's what it stands for. Okay. But look it up. Fact check me on it. Okay. So now BlackRock's doing it. And of course, we know good old Tether. We've got USDT and we've got USDC, and they are already on the Ethereum network. I think the most recent stat that I know of, there's about $270 billion in stable coins, and about 70% of that is on the Ethereum network. Okay. Now Solana's printing out new stable coins. I think they came out with like 10 billion in stable coins recently, like a week or 2 weeks ago. So Solana's getting in the game, but they're nowhere close to the stable coin marketplace as Ethereum. All right. So that's the story. All right. So next, let's break down again. If you're just joining us, I'm talking about BMNR, talking about MSTR, the two companies that are, they are the winners. Nobody's going to catch them. They are the winners in the marketplace, and they are reshaping the crypto landscape, period. They're reshaping the crypto landscape. Tom Lee, the leader of BMNR, the spokesperson, Michael Saylor, the leader of MSTR, the spokesperson, and in different ways, they're teaming up to do this. They're friends. And I'm not saying they're teaming up in terms of their game plan. MSTR is clearly Saylor. BMNR is clearly Tom Lee, but it's not like they're rivals in this. These two are friends. They have conversations about this, and the world needs Bitcoin digital gold, and they need Ethereum, the digital city, where applications are being built on top of it. Money's moving faster than the speed of light. Transactions are settling on top of it, and companies and organizations are tokenizing real world assets to go on the blockchain. And an example of this too is another company that you probably never heard of. It's a company called Realty, and they're tokenizing real estate. And they're doing it on the Ethereum network. So how does it work? Basically, they take US rental properties, they divide the ownership into digital tokens. So when you hear tokenization, this is an example of what that means. So they divide the ownership into digital tokens on the Ethereum network. And so instead of a person going to buy a real estate property where they might not be able to buy it or afford it, now they can own a small piece of that real estate property by buying a token. You can buy 1%. You could buy smaller pieces of it. And so an example would be if I had a $200,000 property, I might split that $200,000 property up into 2,000 tokens, and each token represents a piece of ownership of the property. So you're basically taking the property, you're wrapping it up in this token, like wrapper, which then goes onto the Ethereum network. It exists in tokens, and real people can go on there and buy these tokens and own a piece of the real estate. That's the game. There's another company called Ondo, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, ONDO. They're tokenizing bonds. Basically, you can hold US treasuries on chain rather than holding it in a brokerage account. Why? It's faster. You can do it 24/7, 365, and all payments and transactions settle faster. Not to mention that all the settlements of these purchases and transactions take place on the blockchain, which is the reason why people are doing this, because of the security and the fact that those transactions are recorded forever and can never be changed. Whereas traditional finance, it's like, we'll just decide sometimes to doctor the books and change the books to make it look better. You can't do that on the blockchain. So for transparency, every person on planet Earth should want the blockchain, period. And the only people who don't are the people who don't understand it or have other agendas or counter intention, period. This is the future. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This is where the technology is going. We will always gravitate to superior technology, just like we're gravitating towards AI. Years ago, I was doing seminars on AI 2 years ago. Like, all I had to do was put AI in the title, and we would flood the room with people from all over the world, from all over, mostly, yeah, some people all over the world, but mostly in the US, because AI was the trend. It was hot. The technology was there then. People were like, it might be a fad, blah, blah, blah. Look, it's not going away. The same thing with the technology of the Ethereum blockchain and other blockchains out there and Bitcoin. It's not going away. It's the future. And like 99.9999999% to almost to infinity. And there's no guarantees in life, so we won't put it as an absolute. But there you go. Okay. So that's the game. And it's here. And most of the world still hasn't caught on. Go around and ask your friends, what is BMNR? They don't even know what BMNR is. I still like being at parties with my friends. Yeah, you like MSTR, like strategy? Like what? I'm like, MicroStrategy. Just go to MicroStrategy. Like, what is it? The general world does not know still what these companies are. People like you who are informed, who are watching shows and studying and understand this and are very forward thinking. We know. Rest of the population doesn't. And this is so the future. Okay? So just like when I got into MSTR when it was at $78 back in 2024, I was like, I know. And because I knowed, I didn't put like a little piece of money in there. I went in, dude, full. Okay? Right? Not my full portfolio, but hardcore. Same thing with BMNR right now. I got the same conviction. I'm like, next MSTR, this is the next move for me. I'm not giving anybody financial advice to do this. For me, I'm like, I know this is what's going to happen. Okay? So we're in the game. This is a big time. There's a big shift in the world, and most of the world's still asleep to this. And Wall Street is quietly moving on here. And I've just given you examples of BlackRock already tokenizing assets. This other company that I just mentioned, tokenizing assets. PayPal, PayPal has its own stable coin. If the writing's not on the wall, Goldman Sachs, like it's happening, my friends. It's here, okay? Now, let's take a look at Swift. Swift is testing, literally. They are now testing out the blockchain. And the whole deal with Swift is, and I'm giving you real world examples because we all know this. You ever try to send money across borders? We do it all the time in our business. And somebody internationally wants to send us money from Australia, and they need the Swift code. People are like, what's the Swift code? What the hell why do you need a Swift code? What is the Swift code? Well, the Swift is basically the message between banks. So they're basically a messaging system. That's all Swift is. And so Swift basically sends the message to tell Bank A to send money to Bank B. Really get this, because this is incredibly powerful, right? So you have Bank A that needs to send money to Bank B. Swift is the messaging system in between. And so what's happening now, the reason Swift is testing on the blockchain right now of Ethereum, the reason they're testing on Ethereum is because they want to be able to send the message, meaning, hey, Bank A, send money to Bank B, but without the banks, right? Because like Ethereum's eliminating the middleman of the banks. But they want to be able to say, hey, send the money. And when they say send the money gets sent instantly. And so what happens now with Swift is if you want money sent from person A in another country to person B, let's say in the US, and you want that sent, Swift sends a message. And then when they send the message, the money follows like 2 or 3 days later, dude. How inefficient is this? So Swift is moving to the blockchain to say when we send the message to send the money comes instantly. Come on, man. Right? Come on. Who doesn't want that? So this is the excitement of the technology that exists today. Swift, you know how many trillions of dollars this company moves? Trillions. And they're testing out the chain. Why are they testing out? Because they know they need to move there to be competitive with the new technology of the future, which is the blockchain. They have to go there. It's happening with Swift. It's happening with PayPal. It's happening with BlackRock. Wall Street's going. They're there. So if you listen to Tom Lee talk, he talks about Ethereum and kind of being like the new Wall Street. And he says in 1971, the U.S. went off the gold standard. So we all know this happened in 1971. The U.S. comes off the gold standard and the dollar comes into play, but it becomes the synthetic dollar, which is the fake dollar. It's no longer backed by gold. Now, at that moment, many people thought that gold was going to be the big thing. It's like, okay, gold is going to be the huge thing. But what happened was Wall Street, the entire industry of Wall Street sprung up because of the synthetic dollar. And Tom Lee even says that Wall Street would not be what it is today without the synthetic dollar, because it was no longer backed by gold. So they could leverage the shit out of it. They could create all kinds of derivative products, all kinds of different products that exist on Wall Street today because of the fake dollar. So the verbiage on this is basically that everybody initially thought gold was a play, but it wasn't in 1971. The real play was Wall Street, because once the dollar became synthetic, they built financial products around it: bonds, stocks, derivatives, all of it. And that's what made Wall Street dominant. It's also what made the dollar dominant. So fast forward to 2025, we're doing it again. Only this time it's not the dollar, it's Ethereum or other blockchains related, such as Solana. But Wall Street, we're seeing a high degree of Wall Street moving to Ethereum. So the idea now is, instead of like taking the dollar and creating all these different products like Wall Street did, what's happening now is, now on Ethereum, Wall Street is now tokenizing these different assets. So now they're taking the dollar. This is what stablecoins is, right? You got a digital dollar now. Taking stocks and they're tokenizing it. They're wrapping it up into a token. They're putting it on the blockchain. You can trade 24/7, 365. They're doing the same with bonds. Same thing with bonds. They're doing the same thing with real estate. I just give you examples of this. So everything's becoming synthetic, as if the money system wasn't synthetic enough. It's becoming more synthetic now, but it's actually moving on to a technology that's better for mankind, which is the blockchain, that's more transparent and also moves faster 24/7, 365. Also, let's not forget, whereas gold was the real money, 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, 100 years ago, the real money today is Bitcoin, okay? The digital gold. And Ethereum is the rails that the money is moving on. It is the digital city. It is a digital financial city that is being built up and sprung up today on planet Earth, okay? So that's the idea of this. Now, if you look at the role, and I'll get into MSTR because some of you are asking about this. I'm going to get into MSTR in just a moment here. It's part 2 of the talk. But if we understand how BMNR is playing a role in this environment, just like Saylor made Wall Street believers in MSTR and Bitcoin. So Saylor was a big, important push on Wall Street really trusting Bitcoin. He was the voice back in 2020. Strategy was the first company to put Bitcoin on their balance sheet. Strategy wrote the playbook, handed it to the other DATs, which is digital asset treasury companies, handed it to the BMNRs of the world, handed it to all the other digital asset treasury companies out there and said, here's the playbook. They forged the path. Now you have companies coming along, and companies like BMNR doing it with a different asset like Ethereum. And so if you watch the role that Saylor played to get Wall Street to start adopting Bitcoin, you're seeing Tom Lee and BMNR playing the same role that Strategy played, but they're playing it with Ethereum. And so they are the voice and one of the companies that is going to move the infrastructure forward for the blockchain technology. And one of the reasons for this is simply this. One, they hold a crap load of Ethereum. 2.1% of the supply. They will easily own 5% of the supply. And as you heard me talk about earlier, Tom was talking in a video that they talked to their researchers about owning 10% of the supply. And they had people researching. Would it be good for the network? Would it be bad for the network? So there's talks about this. They're definitely going to get 5% of the supply, in my opinion. Okay. So now they own a huge part of the supply. But let's not also forget that you have a company like BMNR that is also investing in other companies to build up the infrastructure of the Ethereum network and the blockchain. For example, the company Eightco. They invested in it somewhere around a month ago. They invested $20 million into it. Within about 7 to 10 days, the value of that company 10x. Now, why is that important? It's a very, very important point. And we hear this thrown around quite a bit, like Eightco, and then we hear about Sam Altman's coin, Worldcoin, and we hear like, oh, they just invested in this company. Sounds pretty cool. It's going to increase the value of their treasury. No, it's extremely, extremely, extremely important to the advancement of the blockchain technology. Here's why. Because you sit here and you go, great, we're going to build up Ethereum. We're going to buy a bunch of Ethereum. Companies are going to be able to get on Ethereum, and they're going to be able to settle transactions faster, move money faster. It's going to be great for the world. Everybody's going to be happy, fantastic. With the world of AI springing up, the threat of bots and the threat of AI needs to be handled. So on the network is something called proof of human. So people who are transacting on the network, doing business with each other, financial companies, trading money, swapping back and forth, you want to know that the person you're dealing with on the other side is not a bot. So it's called proof of human. So investing in a company like Eightco, which also has a partnership with Sam Altman and their company and their coin Worldcoin, together they've created a partnership. Sam Altman is supplying the technology of proof of human, so we know it's not a bot. And then they're working with Eightco, who actually settles the transactions. So now you can know that you're settling, that a transaction that you're doing with another company is being done with an actual real company or a real human, proof of human. And also the transaction is being settled. These two technologies come together to make that happen. Very, very, very important part of the infrastructure. Very important. So BMNR is not just playing a role buying Ethereum. They're helping build up the infrastructure. And when you hear, terminology thrown around in an interview I was just watching with Tom Lee called a kingmaker, where they literally build up these companies like they are kingmakers, because BMNR has such power now that they own 2% of supply. When they invest in a company, they can make these companies into major companies and also a major part of the infrastructure and technology of the future of money. So that's exciting as well. So lots of cool things happening in the marketplace with this. Let's not also forget that you have BMNR, which is going to be staking Ethereum in the future. So when you talk about a company that has $11 billion or $12 billion worth of Ethereum, when they stake it, we're talking about $360 million of income coming in every single year for the company. So they're not just sitting there with an asset on their balance sheet. There's going to be income generated when they stake their Ethereum, which will happen in the future most likely. So that's what makes the company extremely exciting. It's why I'm extremely excited about it. It's why I'm invested in it. And ultimately, at the end of the day, there's a lot of cool things that are going on with it. Now, when you look at the marketplace and you look at Ethereum and you look at MSTR, they're highly, highly traded stocks. So they're both in about the top 30 of the most highly traded stocks in the marketplace. And so when you look at the market capitalization of a company like BMNR, it's small, but it's traded to a very, very high degree. About $3 billion is traded a day with BMNR. And then you have with MSTR about $3.5 billion a day, roughly, approximately. So they're highly liquid, highly traded stocks. And Wall Street's going to pay attention to liquid companies. And as Tom was saying in a recent interview, they're interested in companies that are in the top 30. And so when you have BMNR and you have MSTR in the top 30, those are the companies that Wall Street's paying attention to, BMNR and MSTR. So at the end of the day, I think it's not that there's not going to be other digital asset treasury companies out there, but there's going to be two clear winners. And most of the money is going to flow to the clear winners, which is BMNR and MSTR, in my opinion. So there you have it. Two powerhouses in the marketplace doing two totally different things, but things that are very, very important to the future of the blockchain, which is Saylor with MSTR and Tom Lee with BMNR. All right. So you look at the trading volume, extremely high. And because of that, you've got BMNR moving into large cap territory. So when you look at companies like this, eventually they're going to start getting passive flows. So right now, Strategy, because they're part of the Russell 2000, Strategy gets passive flows that come into them all the time. Because when you're part of one of these indexes, it's a requirement of It's a requirement of the companies in there that they buy your shares. So Strategy is part of the Russell 2000. So their shares are actually bought. Every time people go and buy the Russell 2000, they're buying a piece of Strategy. And eventually, Strategy, we'll see, I think, on December 8th, Strategy will have an opportunity to get considered for the S&P 500 and get voted in again. So these passive flows will be important to these companies like BMNR and MSTR. BMNR is not yet on the S&P 500 or on the Russell 2000, but eventually I think they will be. Certainly on the Russell 2000, and Strategy, we're waiting for them to get on the S&P 500. Hopefully in December 8th, they'll get voted in. We know they got passed over recently when they checked the box. They checked every single damn box. They got passed over, and other companies got on to the S&P 500, but that would have been huge for Strategy if they got in the S&P 500. So the idea is October, we run up. November, we run up. If Strategy gets added to the S&P 500 in December, that could be a massive, massive inflow to Strategy right away. And you can see a major boost in December for Strategy. Okay. So hopefully it will happen. I know they deserve it because they're reshaping the landscape, and passive inflows into these companies is important because you have money just on autopilot that's going into them. Okay. So let's talk about MSTR. I've been talking all about Ethereum and BMNR. Strategy now holds 640,000 Bitcoin at today's price of $125,000. Their Bitcoin value would be worth about $80 billion. Now, I know today's price is not at 125,000, even though we did hit it. We're down to 122,500 on the price of Bitcoin right now. So let's say the value of their Bitcoin holdings is 77 billion or something like that. Okay. Strategy only has $8.2 billion in debt. So all this talk that you hear sometimes it's put in the marketplace by the media of they're over leveraged and they're doing this and they're doing that, it's just not true. They got $8.2 billion of debt, and they're worth $77 billion. They're like 9 times, that's a 9-to-1 ratio of the value of their Bitcoin to their debt. And now I know that you add into the preferred, you add the preferred stocks in there, and they have payments on the preferred stocks, and that adds to a component of that, but I'm not including that. I'm just talking about $8.2 billion in debt. Okay. So it's clearly obvious that Strategy owns a crap load of Bitcoin. The company is valued at $100 billion, more than $100 billion. And this was a company 5 years ago that was valued at $1 billion, and now they're $100 billion. The company is extremely strong. The concern that Strategy would one day have problems, you would have to see a Bitcoin go all the way down to the low 20,000s for there even to be consideration of Strategy having problems, and it would have to stay there for a while. I don't think we're going to see a $20,000 Bitcoin again. We know back in 2021 or 2022, it popped all the way down to about $15,000 Bitcoin, and that was back in 2020 and 2021 bull run. I don't think we're ever going to see a $20,000 Bitcoin again. I don't think Strategy has anything to worry about, and Strategy is an extremely sound company moving into the future. There's also the understanding of looking at Strategy from perspective of, you've heard the word tossed around of Strategy as a sovereign put, and Tom Lee calls Strategy a sovereign put. And what that basically means is they kind of have like a built-in insurance or protection mechanism for the company, because when governments want to buy Bitcoin, they're going to go buy Strategy. One, if you have a government that wants to go buy a massive amount of Bitcoin, it's not going to be available on the exchanges, number one. Number two, if they did go buy it on the exchanges, it would push up the price drastically, and they don't want to do that because you want to buy a large degree of Bitcoin. You don't want to buy it, and all of a sudden you start pushing up the prices and you're pricing yourself out. So they're going to go to companies like Strategy, and they're going to buy Strategy. And many institutions already own Strategy. I think the recent number is about 50% of who owns Strategy is institutions. And I think it's as high as 60%. So BlackRock owns 5%. Other institutions own Strategy. And so when governments do get into Bitcoin, which they're going to, and we know some smaller governments have, they're going to buy Strategy. So this stock long-term has incredible value. It's going to be around for a long, long time, just like I believe that BMNR is going to be, and the future is extremely bright. All right. So it is a solid company. And Bitcoin would have to fall big time for Strategy to have any problems whatsoever. In their Q3 earnings, so we just ended. We have October, November, December coming up. We just ended Q3 at the end of September. Their earnings are looking around $10 per share. I think they're locking in about $2.5 billion of gains for this quarter. And there was a lot of talk with strategy about the corporate, the alternative minimum tax that was going to be charged, where it was going to be a 15% tax. And the idea was like, oh my God, what happens if strategy gets hit with this 15% tax? They might have to sell some of their Bitcoin to pay for this tax. And people were thinking that this could be bad news for strategy. It's not going to happen. And so the fear around this alternative minimum tax is gone, and it's not something that strategy needs to worry about anymore. So that's good news for strategy. So we're blowing that off the line. Okay, we're also blowing off the line. September and the last couple months of strategy not being so good, and we've seen how the stock moves. It went down to 296, and now it's back up to 352 as close of business on Friday. That's how the stock moves. I think we're about to hit the freaking turbocharging in October and November of Bitcoin, which hit a new all-time high, of Ethereum, which is going to break all-time highs. And we're going to see BMNR and these treasury companies moving up faster. Do I think strategy is going to move like it was moving in 2024? I don't. I think it was a special case in 2024 where it was moving at a 3x or a 4x to its Bitcoin holdings. I don't think we're going to see a 3x or a 4x again. Could we see a 2x? Yes, it's possible. I don't know if that's the case, but I think we're going to have a really good run in October and November for strategy. So let's watch and see what happens. Okay. So that is what's happening. And that's the excitement of what's going on in the marketplace. So in summary, and then when you look at strategy, I mentioned this before, but the trading volume on strategy every single day is freaking through the roof. And BMNR is crazy, the trading volume on it. It's crazy. I trade BMNR every single day, and so 5 days a week. And I average trading BMNR about 5% a week on the low end. So I make 5% profit a week trading it. And then sometimes on a good week, I'll make 10%. So it is incredible stock if you know how to trade on, because of the liquidity and also the volatility of how it moves. In 2024, I was trading strategy, not to the degree that I'm trading BMNR, but I was trading strategy too. And I remember how strategy was moving in 2024. And also, when you take a look at MSTR and how it moved in 2024, there were pockets in 2024, because I lived through it, because I owned it in 2024, where you had pockets where it ran up, and you had pockets where it just sat there for months and months and months and months doing nothing. And if you were in the run with the massive run up, where before the stock split with MSTR in 2024, it was priced at $1,100, because that was before the stock split. That's why it's lower now. And then it shot up all the way. No, it was priced at $1,000. It shot up all the way to $1,900 really fast. And then it dropped all the way back down to $1,100, $1,000. Big drop down. And then it ran back up again. So we have gone through the lulls of strategy. Let's keep the faith for it over the next couple months and have a big run moving forward. That's my goal. Okay. That's what I'm planning for, which is why I continue to hold strategy. And then at some point, just full disclosure on what I'm planning to do. At some point, I'm going to take some profits on BMNR and on MSTR. I don't know how much or to what degree, but I am going to take some profits. And my plan right now, and I will let you know if it changes, because I own a lot of BMNR and I also trade it. At some point, I will dump a big bag of it, and then I will just sit in cash and trade it daily, so I don't have the long-term risk of it. And I may hold some of it long-term. And strategy, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with it. My Bitcoin, the plan is just to hold it at this point and continue to hold like I have been. So there you have it. And that is what I was here to say today. So in summary, to sum it up, if you joined us late, the summary on this is threefold. Right? Number one, Bitcoin hit an all-time high. Also, if you have not gotten my book, go get my book on Money Game, because everything that I'm talking about on the show is in detail in there. And I personally believe that one cannot have full conviction in Bitcoin or Ethereum or strategy or BMNR if one doesn't understand the source of the problem of money. So not only in my book do I go in depth in BMNR, into MSTR, into Ethereum, into Bitcoin, I also talk a little bit about my trading strategy in there. But I also go into depth into the history of money, into understanding how the Federal Reserve works. Because if one doesn't understand the source of the problem and compare it to the actual truth of Bitcoin today and the truth of the blockchain technology, If you don't have comparable data, it's hard to have that much conviction, because if you have a prior confusion on money, how do you fully understand the truth when you see it? So I lay out the entire prior confusion of money, the entire history of it, when it started getting bastardized and cheated and turned into printing of money. And it's well before we had the dollar. Okay, this goes back to the Roman Empire. You got to go check it out. And you just watch. And what were the first banks that showed up on the planet? Like, it's all in the book. And how the first banks, who were goldsmiths, right? The first version of them, they were loaning out money that they didn't have. They were loaning out money on deposits of gold that they didn't have, dude. This happened. This is going back a long, long time ago. So when you look and you understand how things have been literally bastardized and screwed up by humans, you want to understand why we have a new technology like blockchain and why we need a set of protocols and rules to keep people in check. Because if we don't have these protocols and rules in check that are public knowledge and are in check by a network of thousands and thousands of computers that back it up, humans will continue to go on and be unethical and screw up the networks and screw up money. So we understand the source. We also understand the Fed. I break it down for the first time. You decide on whether it's true or not or what you believe. But I break it down. How does it actually work? And I understand how it works. I know exactly how it works. And it's all in the book. And if you know exactly how it works, then you can go share this stuff and be like, hey, mom, hey, dad, hey, grandpa. I mean, my 82-year-old stepfather is in Bitcoin, because we sat down and we explained it to him. And once somebody understands the traditional financial system compared to this financial system, it is the biggest no-brainer in the world. But the challenge one runs into when you're trying to disseminate, to sell, to close, to inspire, to spread, to get the word out to other people across the planet about this incredible technology of Bitcoin, this incredible technology of Ethereum, this incredible technology of the blockchain. When you're trying to get it out to the world and the world does not understand the problem they're sitting in, they're not going to adopt the new technology. So you have to show them the classic problem that they're sitting in, and you have to drill it in and stick in the knife and go, yo, wake up. You're sitting on a disaster. And by the way, your 10 to 12% rates of return that you're getting, when you factor in taxes, inflation, lost opportunity costs, management fees, asset inflation is different than CPI, guys. CPI is inflation, the basket of goods and services. Asset inflation, homes, college tuitions, right? The assets that you want. Not all of that is included in the CPI numbers. The real inflation number is not 3%. It's more. So when you look at a 10 to 12% rate of return and you minus out all of that, most of the world is walking around with at best 2 to 3% rates of return. At best. At best. So when you walk mankind, womankind through this, and you sit with your father, and you sit with your mother, and you sit with your family that's not sold on, and you sit with the financial advisors on Wall Street that are protecting their jobs and their institutions, when you show them the truth and you actually lay out the facts and you stick in the knife, not in a way to be mean, but to show them this is a real problem, they will then be open to the solution of Bitcoin, of Ethereum, and then one day of MSTR and BMNR. But one cannot walk around and talk to people and go, hey, like this BMNR thing is the greatest thing on the planet. Now, I do it on this channel because most of my people know Bitcoin, they know Ethereum. And in my prior videos, I've laid out the problem with money. So unless one does that, the old world, which a lot of our friends and family are stuck in, they will not accept the truth because they're comfortable in the lie because they've been living it for so long. And there's some comfortable measure in not changing and living in it and just surviving and just getting by. You cannot survive with a 10% rate of return. You can't. It's impossible. It's mathematically impossible. Okay? And I should say you can survive, but barely. Barely. It's all in my book. Go give it to somebody. Download it. Give it away for free. Spread the word. Okay? The world needs to know this. This is a massive, 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 massive problem. And you know, now you have Wall Street. Wall Street's going to go to where the money is. The same problem that they helped create, they're going to go to a new blockchain. And thank God there's rules and protocols to keep them in check. Otherwise, they'd create a massive problem. And they probably will create additional problems, but at least the set of rules and protocols that exist protect us. They protect us. And that's why Bitcoin is beautiful. That's why Strategy, to me, is the most intelligent company on the face of the planet, because they were the first mover there and they own the most. And Saylor, I think, is one of the most brilliant people walking around on the planet. Really. Like, you can talk to me all day long about AI. I love the technology. I think it's fantastic. I use it every day. It's amazing. It's brilliant. But man, the way money in the current system is ruining our population and ruining our countries and ruining the world. Like, you finally had somebody stand up and share their voice in the face of Wall Street like Saylor, and he got the trend moving, along with all the other OGs that came before that who really paved the path. But thank goodness for people with a voice who are doing that, because we needed it. And now there's some measure of hope for the world to actually get out of this mess. Now, I don't think that the Fed and I don't think that the government I don't think there's any plan to ever get out of debt, because the system isn't built on that. There's $34 trillion in debt. It's $1 trillion of interest payments. It's not built. It's built to keep it that way. I don't think we'll ever get out of debt in our lifetime in the United States. And you look at what's going on in other countries across the world, and it's worse. You look at the inflation in Argentina, it's disgusting. So this is a global problem, and it's a systemic problem that exists all across the world because our money system is based on a lie. Hence the name of my book, Money Game, the 10% Lie, the playbook Wall Street doesn't want you to read. So let's get the message out there. Let's help people. Tell people the book is free at this moment in time. I'm giving away the digital version. When the paid version comes out, I'll start selling it. But go get the free version. Go give it to a friend. Go give it to a family member in need, and give them some hope, man. Because really, the world is apathetic right now around money. How can good, hardworking people who are so ethical walk around the planet and put in an honest day's work and literally have that money silently stolen from them through inflation? Inflation is the silent theft. And it's happening. And also, please go check your 401k plans. Not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, not tax advice. I lived in the financial world. From the time I was 21 years old, I started in the financial world. I saw all the prospectuses in the company I worked with. I saw the management fees. I saw all the things that go on behind the scenes. At 21, I was questioning, why would anybody pay for this? Why are the fees so high? Why would somebody lock up their money for 30 years? Please go look at your 401k plans. Look at the fees that are being charged. A 1% management fee over a 30-year period or 40-year period can wipe out 30% of your wealth. And in many of the 401k plans, in the good 401k plans, you're getting charged 0.25%. In the ones that ain't so good, you're getting charged 1%. So either way, most of the time you're getting hit with this. If you're an S&P 500, the S&P 500 index funds don't have those management fees. They're very, 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 very low. That's so minuscule. But if you look inside these 401k plans, there's management fees. Go look at what your financial advisor is charging you. I'm not trying to take money off somebody's table. I'm trying to put it on your table. Make sense? And so if they're truly doing a good job for you, go look at what the management fee is. Because if you're going to have $1 million, right? If you're going to have $1 million, and that's the plan. Like, I'm going to grow my money to have $1 million in 20 or 30 years, or I want to have $10 million or 20, 30 years or more. If you have a 1% management fee, instead of $1 million, you're going to end up with more like $700,000. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think a financial advisor sitting there picking some different funds, mutual funds, and and going, hey, maybe you should do this one, and giving you some advice a few times a year deserves $300,000 of your $1 million portfolio. Do you? I don't think so. So go look. And if you truly believe they do, because they do an amazing job and they're outpacing the S&P 500 and they're getting you 20, 30, 40, 50% rates of return, then great. Give them what you think is fair. But don't let somebody quietly take 1% off your table, which could be $300,000 in the future. Or if you're going to have $10 million in assets, it could be $3 million. That's crazy. Crazy. Go look. Okay? Go look so you know. All right, don't just assume that it's not there. I was sitting down with a friend the other day. I said, he's 30-something years old. I'm like, let me help you out, dude. Like, here's my book. Let me help you, bro. Like, pull up your 401k. Let me see it. And I'm looking at his 401k, and I'm helping him with it just because I want to help the dude. All right? So If the best that one thinks they can do is putting their money in 401k, they are sorely mistaken. Sorely mistaken. It is not set up to help you win. It was never built to help you win. The $40 trillion of assets that are sitting in the 401k, they are pooled together and they are leveraged to help make these companies money. And while you're sitting there on crappy 10 to 12% rates of return, or your family members are because you know better and you're smart enough, while you're sitting on 10 to 12% rates of return, literally they are pooling your money and they are leveraging your money. And some of these 401k plans are loaning the money out to other institutions. The institutions are giving them collateral back. They're taking the collateral back that they get. They're investing the money. The money's being turned over, and they are using the velocity of money to make themselves a crap load of money, while the average American is sitting on crappy 10 to 12% rates of return. And when they start to look in their plan, like my buddy was, who's 30 years old, he's making 7%. Like, dude, 7%, bro. How are you surviving with 7%? All right. That's what's happening in the world. Wake your family up. Okay. Wake your friends up. All right. Hope you're doing well. Have an amazing rest of the day. It's fun being here with you. I just got off the plane, so I'm on 4 hours of sleep, but I wanted to do this and get it in, and it's going to be an incredible week. I think, what do you think on Bitcoin? You think we're going over 130,000 this week? I think we're going over 130,000 in Bitcoin this week. I think we're going to run up. I think BMNR is going to run up. I think strategy is going to run up. I think it's going to be a great week. I'm excited about it and can't wait. So hope you guys have an amazing rest of the day. Stay well. Take care of your families. Spread good news to your families. Go get my book. If the link's not down there right now, it should be down there. Go grab it. Give it to somebody for free. I'm giving it away. Just go give it to somebody for free. Help somebody out. Okay? See you soon. And if you have not subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the channel. Leave some comments down below. And you guys are amazing. I will see you soon.